For decades, the world believed America was the unstoppable center of global power, but a quiet transformation was happening across the oceans. While attention stayed focused on politics and conflicts, China was building something far more powerful: a network of factories, ports, and trade routes. This story is not only about military strength or politics, it is about how a nation changed the balance of global influence. From small manufacturing zones to massive industrial cities, China created an economic machine that would reshape the modern world. The biggest question today is whether China is simply becoming richer or whether it is challenging the position America has held for generations. To understand this shift, we have to go back to the moment when China started transforming from an isolated economy into a global powerhouse. In the late 20th century, China opened its economy and began attracting companies searching for cheaper production and massive industrial capacity. Factories expanded rapidly, millions of workers entered manufacturing, and China slowly became the place where the world produced its everyday goods. The products people used around the world started carrying a hidden story, because behind them was an enormous Chinese industrial system. Electronics, clothing, machinery, and countless consumer products connected global markets to Chinese factories in a way never seen before. But China understood something important. Controlling production could create influence far beyond simply selling products. The country began investing heavily in infrastructure, building modern highways, rail networks, airports, and some of the largest ports on Earth. A powerful economy needs movement, and China created a system where goods could travel faster and cheaper across continents. Massive container ships started carrying Chinese products across oceans, connecting Asian factories with markets in Europe, Africa, and America. Ports became strategic assets because whoever controls major trade routes gains influence over the global economy. One example of this transformation was the rise of Chinese ports, which became some of the busiest shipping centers in human history. Satellite images revealed a new reality. China was no longer just a factory for the world. It was becoming a global economic hub. But economic power was only the beginning, because Beijing had a much bigger vision for global influence. China started developing massive trade route projects, connecting countries through infrastructure, investment, and long-term economic partnerships. This strategy created a new question for the world. Could economic connections become a new form of power stronger than traditional influence? The Belt and Road Initiative became one of China's largest global strategies, connecting ports, railways, and trade routes across different regions. Through these investments, China expanded its economic presence in countries where America had traditionally held strong influence for decades. A new global map started appearing, showing China connected through infrastructure projects stretching from Asia to Europe and beyond. But the rise of China was not only about moving goods, because technology became the next battlefield between the two powers. China invested heavily in advanced industries, including artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, renewable energy, and high-speed technology systems. Companies that once copied foreign designs began competing with some of the biggest technology firms around the world. The competition became visible in industries where future economic leadership could be decided. Stock market screens started reflecting this global competition as investors watched American and Chinese companies compete for dominance. But behind the economic rivalry was a deeper struggle: the battle for control over future innovation and strategic industries. The United States still remained a technological and financial giant, with powerful universities, companies, and global institutions. However, China's rapid growth created pressure on America's traditional advantage in manufacturing and supply chain. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed how dependent many countries had become on Chinese manufacturing networks. From medical supplies to electronics, the crisis showed that global production had become closely connected with China. In Washington, this created concerns about supply chains, economic security, and the future balance of global power. The competition expanded into politics as both nations began influencing international partnerships and global organizations. China increased its presence through trade agreements, investments, and diplomatic relationships across developing regions. Meanwhile, America continued using its long-standing alliances and military partnerships around the world. The difference was becoming clear. America built influence through decades of global leadership, while China was building influence through economic expansion. But power is never measured only by money. because history shows that military strength also shapes global competition. This is where the rivalry entered a more sensitive phase, as both nations began watching each other's strategic moves. Military bases, naval power, and strategic locations became important symbols of this competition, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. China expanded its naval capabilities, while America maintained one of the world's most advanced military networks and alliances. Around the world, countries began carefully balancing relationships between the two largest economies on Earth. Some nations saw China as an opportunity for investment and growth, while others worried about dependence and strategic influence. The global trade system was entering a new era, where economic decisions were becoming connected with national security. Beijing's skyline represented more than a growing city. It represented a country aiming to become a major force in global affairs. But challenging American power is not simple, because influence depends on technology, finance, alliances, innovation, and global trust. The United States continues to hold enormous advantages through the dollar system, military reach, and worldwide partnerships. China's challenge is powerful because it combines manufacturing strength, economic scale, and long-term strategic planning. The competition between these nations is not just happening in government buildings, but inside factories, markets, and technology labs. Every container ship crossing the ocean, every cargo train moving across continents, and every trade route tells part of this story. Satellite images of Earth reveal a changing global network where economic power is becoming more connected than ever before. The future may not belong completely to one country, because global influence is becoming more complex and competitive. The real question is not whether China will replace America tomorrow, but how the balance between them will evolve. History shows that global power shifts happen slowly, through decades of investment, innovation, and strategic decisions. What we are witnessing today is one of the biggest economic and geopolitical transformations of the modern era. From factories and ports to technology and military strategy, every piece connects to a much larger global competition. The world is watching as two different systems compete to shape the future direction of international power. The next chapter of global history may depend on how America and China respond to each other's rise. Because the biggest power struggles are not always decided by battles, but by who builds the strongest foundation for the future.